Hi, welcome to another Roboflow training movie. In this training movie, I will show you how you can assign different field values or assign a container, in other words, a category, depending on the folder the file was dropped in. Imagine you have on your file system a drop folder and delete. This drop folder, and don't mind the name FTP, that doesn't mean anything. This drop folder has is the place where files are being dropped in, and the files that are being dropped in here are dropped potentially in a certain drop folder. I have here 3 examples: something in the root, something in a folder with even another subfolder, doesn't matter, and something in here. So these 3 files, need to be ingested, and to be able to ingest them, we made a hotfolder workflow. A hotfolder workflow will catalog the files. Well, actually, a hotfolder workflow will look at the files in the folder and process them. What we did in the workflow is we cataloged them. We added the cataloging process. So let's have a look at that. So this is the workflow. And as you can see, standard normal hotfolder workflow, but I added here the fact that we're going to open and close a catalog and put some stuff in there. We're using permission template and an asset handling set. And these things are used inside the cataloging instruction, and I prefer to have them in this page so you can always quickly see what elements are used in your action script. Otherwise, if you ever want to know where did I use asset handling set this or that, you would have to go through every extra instruction of your action scripts of all your workflows, which is, of course, a horrifying job. So better to put anything that can change, any elements that you fixed, hard-coded in there, use a placeholder, use an inline scripting tag, and then put them in the parameters. Good. The most important element that I added is the parameters. This is something I very often do. I add a parameter file to this setup. And why am I doing this? Because I want a different behavior depending on some values. And in this case, what do? I have a value that I pick up whenever a file is processed. It's offered to the workflow under the tag hot. And then automatically it also stores the subfolder path inside the hot folder. So for our example, there was a clown, there was tongue, all these are the subfolders. Well, it offers this as a piece of text in the workflow that we can use. If you want to use, for instance, other parts of the file name to determine where to put the file, that is a possibility too. Maybe you want a file extension, then you can use those inline scripting tags to add the file extension, or to get to the file extension, and then test on that. What is this first column? This first column is what I call the condition. And the condition, I very often use regular expressions for it. So the syntax of regular expression, you can easily look it up in the internet. If you look on the help page, I point to a website that is very useful for regular expressions. Here the basic idea is whatever you put in between parentheses is the fixed value you're looking for. So I'm actually looking for a hot subfolder called clown with a slash, and that slash is coming from as a separator of folders, and that's what that hot subfolder will have. We'll see that. I'm looking for another one, tongue, or so dot star means in regular expressions any character any number of times. So it could be nothing, or it could be 400 different characters behind it, but nothing in front. So this basically said starts with this. Careful, this is case sensitive. So if you want, for instance, if you say, well, clown could be uppercase or lowercase, you would have to change it in something like this. Square brackets means we're going to put a choice in there, and the choice is uppercase or lowercase c. And what we then do is remove this c. So then we say it starts with either an uppercase c or a lowercase c, and then it has laun, clown. If you want to do that for each letter, then you have to specify each letter like that. And so all very well doable, possible, and again, for those syntax of regular expressions, I refer to the internet. What else I specified here is, depending on which subfolder it was dropped in, it's going to assign a certain category. The category doesn't have to exist, and so if the category does not exist, it will create it dynamically. Then you can also assign one or more fields, field values. Here in this example, I'm just saying status new. It could be setting a boolean, then would the value be true or false. It could also be multiple field values. In that case, if you want to set multiple field values, you have to separate them by $tab, and then the other field values like notes or whatever, and then the same thing for the value. You would separate it with a $tab. Okay, so then let's execute this. The idea is that it should only execute one of these. So the logic in the workflow will say, do I find clown? No. I go to the next one. Do I find tongue? Yes. Okay, I assign this and I leave the loop. If I find if none of the above were executed, well, then I'm testing here with any character, and I'm saying, well, it's assigned to the wrong folder. You don't have to have that there, but it's a nice way of identifying those files that maybe were dropped inadvertently in a wrong folder or in no folder. So let's run the workflow. As I said, we have 3 files waiting for us, and we're doing this towards the sample catalog. So I'm starting this. So here is our catalog. At this point, of course, the records are not in the catalog, but they will be soon. I click on start, and here we can see that the records are appearing. This workflow assumes that you're working with a vaulted catalog, which means that the cataloging process needs to move it to the vault, which means that you will have defined on your catalog a vault asset, a vault, or another central asset location, and that you have it set to either always an exclusive or always, or if you have set it to the asset handling set, then you have to make sure you use an asset handling set that moves it to that central asset location. Why? Well, if we have a look at this folder where we before running the workflow had 3 files, you see the standard behavior of that workflow is to delete the files when they are processed. So you end up with empty folders. That's the purpose of a hot folder or a drop folder. You drop something in, when it's processed, it's deleted. So if you're not working with a vaulted catalog, you need to modify the script so that it first copies the files to a new location and then catalogs them from that new location. But now the workflow is built to work with a vault. We can also, of course, before I forget, see the categories and the status. You see status is new, status is new, status is new. This is our clown. So if we look at, you can see that it has assigned a category called my clown. It also created a subcategory called smileys, and you can see if I do it the other way around and I go here, wrong folder. This was the one that we dropped in the root, and we said, well, actually you should not do that, so we're assigning it to wrong folder. If you look at your tongue, you see that it has assigned the file that was in that folder called tongue. We can find that information also in the logging. So in the logging we can see, I give you the information of the hot subfolder, which contains this for that particular clown. and then it says, okay, so I'm evaluating actually these values. As a result, I'm assigning the category clown. You see, and then I also say set record field value, status is new. If you leave the category field empty, it will not assign a category. If you leave the field name column empty, it will not assign a field value for that record or for that type of record. So that's how the workflow works. Let's have a quick peek inside. It starts, of course, with reading my parameter file and storing it as a table, as a global variable, because I'm going to use it outside my first item loop. And I want to reuse it over and over again, but not open it over and over again. And so I'm reading it once and then storing it globally, so all the instances of, or all the calls to this action script will have access to that table. Then I'm writing this particular hot subfolder to the log, so that you can see in the log what he is going to look at to make his assignments. Then I'm cataloging the file, and in your cataloging file you can see that I'm using these two placeholders, those two variables that I created in the beginning in my parameter file, in my parameters section. And I'm using the hot catalog. I opened the catalog here as well in my first loop, and I called it hot, but again I prefix it with global so that the workflow stores it in the global section. So I only have to open the catalog once, process all the files, and then at the end I have an if test saying, is this the last item? Yes, well then I'm closing this catalog. It's more efficient than opening and closing the file for each record. Then I'm processing the lines of my table, of my parameter table. I'm evaluating the condition. I'm then storing if the condition is valid. And remember I said we're using a regular expression, and so I'm doing a regular expression based on the condition value, which was that hot subfolder. Then I'm storing the category. If the category is not empty, I'm assigning, I do a set field value to the field categories of the category that you specified in the table. I'm doing the same thing for the field. If the field is not empty, I'm assigning the field. And then an important instruction is here, exit current loop. So if I found the corresponding row in my parameter table, I only want to execute that line. So that's the point where I'm saying, okay, finished. So that's the logic now of this workflow. In other workflows, you might not have that, and you want maybe to execute all rows of that table. In this case, we just want to go to the one that we're looking for and then exit that loop. That's why it's inside this if test, of course. Otherwise, it would, if you would put it outside this if test, it would only process the first row. So, thank you for joining this training movie. This was yet another explanation of what you can do with Roboflow and how it can help you automate your Cumulus environment. Thank you for joining, and see you in the next one.